Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Future Proof, the podcast where we're talking to founders, CEOs, and leaders about how AI, data, and automation are affecting the business landscape across all industries. And if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. Before we get started, as we always say, is if you're looking to understand where to start with AI, if you just want to figure out and have a conversation with us about, the best place to start to find your best use cases, there's a link in every one of our show notes to book 15 minutes, 30 minutes with us. We're happy to talk to anybody about how best to do that. But let's jump into today's episode. I'm joined today by Micah Ricke from Team Industries. Micah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brent. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So Micah, let's start with, like we always do, the leader's journey. Talk to us about your background and basically the family history of Team Industries.
Sure thing. Team Industries was founded in 1967 by my grandfather. After World War II, he decided to get a degree in engineering. He didn't graduate high school. I think he dropped out in 8th grade. And then he worked various jobs for Honeywell, General Electric, and that around the country. He grew up in rural Minnesota. That's where he wanted to live. There weren't a lot of engineering jobs available in Clearwater County at that time, probably the poorest county in Minnesota. And so he decided to start his own company. And he started with a machine shop in Cambridge, Minnesota, which is down by the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul.
Yep.
And eventually, over the years, the business grew. He added more facilities. And today I am in our Bagley, Minnesota headquarters. Bagley is a small town in kind of north central Minnesota, about 3.5, 4 hours north of Minneapolis. And we have about 1,200 employees company-wide, 6 facilities in Minnesota, 2 in Mexico, and 1 in Andrews, North Carolina. My journey has been pretty interesting. I started running machines in the shop at the age of 13, and I worked summers and after school in the shop. But when I went to school initially, I went for communications and film. So I studied film for 3 years, and then I realized, you can't just go take a degree in film and go get a job, right? It's who you know. So there was a lot of, feet on the pavement trying to get jobs in that industry. And I decided, you know what, if I'm going to spend this time and spend this money getting a degree, I want it to be in something that is actually meaningful. So I got a degree in engineering and initially did not want to work for Team. I was working at a different company for a couple of years, but my father said, hey, come back, work at Team. My grandfather had passed away from, cancer. He had a long battle. He fought hard, but eventually succumbed to that. And so I came to work for Team in 1999, and I've been here ever since. Worked my way up from project manager to lead engineer to engineering manager, and now my father, he retired 2 years ago, and I stepped into the role as CEO, and it was a good point because we're kind of at this inflection point with all the stuff going on, right? You've got, geopolitics, you had COVID, you have all those things.
Right. Tariffs, you're managing a lot, right? So, shipping and supply chain and All right. Before we jump in, tell everybody about what Team Industry specializes in and who some of your customer base is and kind of some of the clients again, types of clients you serve.
Right. Yeah, so we specialize, we're very vertically integrated engineering and manufacturing company. We specialize in designing and producing high-performance drivetrain solutions, particularly for the power sports and the off-road market. So we do everything from transmissions, transaxles, CVTs, if you're familiar with those, like snowmobiles and ATV applications. Experts in gear design, managing NVH. And then we also, about probably 7 years ago, invested a lot in a mechatronics engineering team. So we're getting into things like controls, inverters, electrification as well. Right. So pretty well-rounded. Right here in Minnesota, in Bagley, Minnesota here, we do a lot of our R&D work. Our product development is here. We have a very good standalone dedicated R&D facility here as well. And we have die casting capabilities, gear manufacturing. So very well-rounded, a lot of capabilities. Our customer base, like I said, is primarily power sports and off-road. It's at anywhere, from Hondas to John Deere's, Kawasaki's, and the like. We also do some with the heavy truck and off-road agriculture and construction markets, and a little bit of defense work as well.
No, that's fantastic. I love it. Thanks, Micah, for talking through all that. Before we jump into how emerging tech is integrating and affecting your industry, what other changes are you seeing across the industry over the last few years? It seems like every industry is changing faster than ever. Are you seeing that in your industry, and in what ways?
Yeah, so for us, it's everything from the designing of the product to the manufacturing of the product. COVID was kind of caught everyone off guard in terms of, I don't think anyone expected manufacturing just to shoot off like it did. I mean, everyone started going out and buying toilet paper, and they started buying boats and ATVs. I mean, the market really shot up. And we knew that was going to be a blip, right? We knew that we were going to head into some later times after that. And then, of course, we had supply chain Armageddon, we call it.
Yeah.
Where it was very difficult to get, really optimizing the supply chain and value stream and everything to get to where, we weren't waiting forever and ever to get parts. We weren't having to air freight, just being much, much better at forecasting and taking, a lot of the data we have and saying, all right, how can we, build some models out there that the customers tell us they want this, but we know based on history here and performance of the last couple of months, and because of all the supply chain issues, we know they're not going to actually take all of that product.
Right.
So how do you hedge? How do you, sit there and not overextend yourself so that you end up with piles and piles of inventory?
Yeah.
That was one of our first forays into trying to, do that analysis, putting together different scenarios and predictions where, hey, this AI software that's available, can this help us out?
Right. It can crunch data in a lot faster and a lot more efficiently, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Micah, we were talking before the podcast, but about how AI is impacting your industry. But for everybody listening, just give them some of the examples, because I think it's fascinating in the way in which AI is helping businesses, in the manufacturing supply chain, right? To your point about data and modeling and design. But yeah, talk to them about when you came back from the conference and all the things that you are starting to see and use.
Yeah, so I attended a manufacturing automation summit, something we go to periodically, and it was very heavily focused on AI. And I'd seen AI, the regenerative design applications, AutoCAD's got some, and PTC's working on some software there. A lot of what we do is, it's custom engineering and being able to take your constraints, right? Designs, it's math, it's physics, so
right.
A lot of that stuff is sort of absolute truths, but we feel like we also have a lot of know-how. The applications that we're in they're not the same as automotive, right? So being able to take that expertise and then essentially have a co-pilot with the engineer, with the designer, with the drafter, to be able to put more product out faster and more accurate. I mean, that's another benefit of it too. I think you get better quality in the long run.
Agreed.
But we have aggressive growth goals, and we operate in fairly rural communities. So you can only attract so many people to these communities, right? So we're very, very much into automation, and we always have been. If you go to our manufacturing facilities, you'll see just thousands of square feet of machines, robots running those machines, and we've got maybe 2-3 people responsible for that area. And a lot of that's been out of necessity. It's not that we want to save a lot of money, so let's cut labor costs by putting a bunch of robots in.
Right.
It's we want to grow. We can only attract so many people into our communities to come work for us.
Right.
We want to take this facility, from 20 million in sales to 40 million in sales. We have to automate.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes on the design and engineering side of it. We're going to have to automate because it had been a big struggle. You get people to apply, and then they find out we're in northern Minnesota.
Right.
They're like, I was kind of hoping you were in the Minneapolis area or the
Right.
Fargo area. So yeah, we have a lot of people turn down opportunities because they don't want to live in such a rural area. Now we're blessed with also having people that like living in this area, so they work for us. I think AI and the automation of design is going to allow them to do more and do it a lot faster. Applying it in our operations where we have real high mix lines that are automated, where we use automation. If you were to compare it to, say, automotive, where they're doing hundreds of thousands or millions of the same product, they can automate that, run it lights out. We're trying to get to where we can run nearly lights out, but have a high mix in that cell or that assembly line.
Right.
And, because we need to be able to do that for flexibility of a floor space, leverage that automation. Don't want to automate something that's only going to be sitting there running 40% of the time. You want to utilize that investment. And so we're able to take new designs. In the past, it would require an entire, probably 12 to 18 months to develop a cell on an assembly line for a product.
Right.
Now we're doing what we call flex lines, where we can actually implement taking a design from the tool stage to put it in production within a couple of weeks, maybe a couple months. But that flexibility and that having the automation be somewhat smart. We still have people involved, but we're using AI to code for that automation for the cells as well. But it's all about how do we do more with the same? How do we grow knowing that?
Right. You're not all of a sudden going to get a couple thousand applicants, right, where you're at. So you have to figure out how you maximize your staff, right? And it's funny you say that, Micah, because, it's all, we had a founder yesterday from a company called Talent Mapper. And what they do is basically they use AI, right, through interview process across. So let's say you take your 1,200 employees, right, and figure out all the skills that they have that you don't know, right? Because companies are facing what you're talking, a geographic constraint, right, that you're dealing with. But many companies have whether it's a budgetary constraint or just a difficulty hiring because we're going to go through a talent crunch, right? Doesn't matter the industry. So figuring out how to maximize your internal workforce is I think a major trend that we're seeing across industries. And I love the way that you're looking at it is how do we make our people better and more productive, right? Do more with the same. And I think that's a great mantra because we on the podcast always say that AI right now is, and again, we're not predicting the future and I don't even want to get into that. We look at everything as what's the opportunity, glass half full. And to your point, let's make AI the co-pilot. So put AI with a great worker and make them 5 or 10 times more productive, better at their jobs, right? Because they can do, increase the quality, they can get better designs, all this stuff that you've been talking about. So I really like the way that you think about that. And I think that as you start to get, deeper into all the different processes, you're going to unlock more things than you ever thought possible. So I think you can do more with the same.
Yeah, it's been pretty exciting lately, just watching the advancements in that. And if you go back a year or 2 years ago, people sort of downplayed it and kind of food potted, the Will Smith eating spaghetti video that everyone made fun of. And now you look at it, it's like, oh smokes.
Yeah.
We're really trying to up how much we communicate with our employees and being open and transparent and really say, hey, this is what we're seeing the next 3 months out, the next year, the next 3 years. And then really communicating frequently and getting the message out there, really driving our core values and our strategy forward. And so we've been, recording videos, phone calls, things of that nature. It was suggested to me by my assistant. She says, well, if you get nervous, all you have to do is we take your picture and we can do an AI generated video of you talking based on, type text. And we looked at that and it was scary. It was really scary.
How good it is, right?
Yeah. I still want to do that. But yeah, that was crazy. I could see where we can take some of our best engineers, everyone talks about succession and we talk about, we've got 30 plus year employees here And a lot of them are going to start retiring soon, and they've got this knowledge, all this tribal knowledge. There's stuff that you can't get out of a book or a manual.
Totally
And
agreed.
See, you take and essentially create like an AI mentor based off the knowledge and the history of your top people. And
I love that you're thinking this way, right? You're the first person we've had on the podcast that even thought that way or brought it up, because we have an AI mentor in our own business for that same reason, and not nearly, 1,200 people. But to your point, we've been talking, Micah, about the baby boomers retiring, and they call it the gray tsunami, right? And that tribal knowledge is leaving the workplace, and we don't have enough people to take it over. And so the only way to capture it is to exactly what you talked about, is capture it on video, have it transcribed and turned into an SOP, right? With the nuance. See what you miss if you just do it like, if you just have someone write something down and put it into an SOP or some sort of manual, is those nuances that you're talking about, that knowledge where inherently they use their gut feel on something or they make tweaks. Right? But if you have it on video and you can use AI to build that, now you have that true knowledge transfer to where that part's captured. And like, oh, this is the real cool things that they did in their job that no one knew about. Yeah. So I give you a lot of credit. I'm love that you're doing that. And I think, I know you're doing it out of necessity. I just think it's good practice, right? To do that. And before AI and before all these tools were there, it'd be really, really difficult to do that. I mean, yeah, you could video someone, but it's not going to transcribe it and put it into, some sort of things that AI can actually learn from and start to make suggestions off of.
And I think, people are really starting to embrace here. We, to kind of get over the hump, we created an AI committee, a steering committee here, to develop some policies around it. And then also look for opportunities to leverage it. We've generated a lot of different, not necessarily ideas, but identified this is really where we should be applying this. This makes sense.
Yeah.
We talked about drafting and designing. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's been, that's one of those areas that was really difficult to get people to move here.
Yeah.
So we actually, for a while there, we're developing our own drafters, basically putting the word out on the shop floor. Does anybody want to learn drafting? And then we train them and teach them. You do that. That's great. And you bring people up, and then it's been a real challenge. Well, it's perfect for AI. You can have one draft produce so many more prints with AI than just doing everything manually on their own.
Yeah. And I think if you can continue to encourage your team, right? And we tell this to everybody that we have on there, is it just makes them a better employee, and it's better for their career if they learn how to use the AI co-pilot in ways that help make their job better. But it also builds their morale, because if they can get rid of the tedious stuff, right, and actually use their brain in the way you really hope they could most of their day, right, then you unlock new things that that you never could get to. And I think that what you're talking about is a perfect example of that. So I love it, Micah. This is great, because people think, right, in some of the industries, and again, I talked to a lot of people in supply chain, manufacturing, logistics. I told you before, insurance, and even in some financial services like banking. And there are people that are, and leaders like yourself, that are doing things the right way with AI. And I don't think the world knows about it. And that's the point of our podcast, is really to highlight the really interesting use cases, right, that you're tackling as a leader of an organization, right, with 1,200 people, because you're looking at, right, what are your constraints, right? And it's, for you, it's geographical, and how do you attract people to come to the area in which you're at? But you're tackling it in the right way by utilizing what's available to you and unlocking things that just weren't there. So I just think it's fantastic. And this is exactly why we started the podcast, is to highlight how people like yourself and leaders like yourself are utilizing this emerging tech to make your company better. Like you said, you have a growth goal. You want to go from 20 to 40, right? I mean, that's how every leader should be thinking, right? How do we do that? And how do we do it smart, right? And not at the expense of our people. Because at the end of the day, right, Micah, I would guess that you would agree, right? Your people are everything, right? And you're just trying to empower them.
Before we started here, our initial discussion, quoting is another one, right?
Yeah.
Right now we spend a lot of resources quoting, and with all the tariff, and the upcoming USMCA stuff, and people are trying to position for that. there's still a lot of onshoring going on. We're probably quoting more than we've ever quoted at any given period in team's history. And it takes a lot of resources to do that, to get accurate quotes. I mean, you don't want to blow a quote, right? So we have, a team put together, but now let's take that a step further. Let's automate that process and let's use AI for that automation. And then the people that are spending so much time doing it today can now go do the things that are really impactful by going out and making sure that the processes are efficient. I'm working on launching new programs and all that stuff that requires, your hands to get dirty and actually wrenching out parts and building fixtures and things like that, as opposed to, sitting there crunching numbers that the computer can do, right?
Right.
Like you said, it's math, it's physics. Those are absolutes. And so you still need people to kind of chaperone it. Like AI it's a highly capable, highly creative intern in a sense, it's a good co-pilot. And you still need people involved in the process. And especially when we're in our market, where you're talking power sports, which is, it's very experiential. So you still need that human element there, but let AI do the mundane stuff. Let it do the things that are not abstract, but, math-based, process-based, just repetitive things, and let your people work on the stuff that's actually fun to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Totally agreed. All right. So last question, and I typically, I vary this one up, but you have an aggressive growth goal, right? And again, I don't know what your time horizon is to try to double the revenue in the business, but Micah, tell me about how you think about the best way to do that, right? Because again, AI can help you in some of it, but is it through relationships that are existing, or is it through new business, or is it a combo of that? How do you get from because the number one question we get on the podcast, right, after is we get two, right? One is, how do I get rid of the mundane stuff in my own job, right? Because the founders and CEOs are the last people, right, that get, you're always thinking about everybody else, right? But how do we help that, right? And then the second one that people always ask us is, hey, Brent, what are you hearing about growth? How are other founders tackling? Because everyone, right, to your point, if you're a CEO or you're a founder, you're thinking about, how do I double, triple the business, or whatever the growth goal is. How do you think about that problem for yourself?
So we do have some aggressive growth goals, and a lot of that's driven basically out of necessity. Like I had mentioned before, we're heavily into the power sports market and the recreational markets.
Yep.
And that's great. We love it's a pillar of our business, and it'll stay a pillar of our business. But in higher interest rate environments, it's discretionary income. So we're looking at how do we pivot into some adjacencies that are, not in that discretionary bucket, right?
Yep.
And one of the things that we did over this last year is we took a really, a real focused look at our capacity, facilities, equipment, people, and all that, and the communities that we're in, and looking at that and saying, okay, we can unlock a lot of capacity within our facilities with automation, with investing in technology, with automating not just production, but all the back office stuff that we talked to, even some design tasks and that. So we realized that within our current footprint, we can double the size of this company. And so we look at that as excess capacity, and we want to fill that excess capacity, because in the future, when there's another recession, which eventually there will be, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I know a lot of
me
people,
neither, but I'm with you. Yep.
Job market's still very, very tight, very competitive out there, but eventually we'll have something. So I really want to be able to weather anything like that in the future, say 10, 15 years from now.
Yep.
So that's really what's driving a lot of the growth goals, and that'll be a combination of potentially acquisitions. We're open to that, but also keep building off the relationships that we have. Really strive to be there for our customers. Have a guarantee we will not shut them down. That's our guarantee. During all the COVID and the supply chain issues and the freight and the shipping issues that we're having in 2021 and 2022, we never shut a single customer down. Relationships, very, very important. And I think that, beyond the product and beyond the technical expertise, it's the relationship building that, we're not funneling all communication with our customers through a single salesperson or anything like that. We're building relationships, engineer to engineer, production manager to purchaser, and with our suppliers as well, not just our customers. And so we've been very fortunate, and a lot of our growth has just come from relationships. We never really had to have a marketing strategy. We never really had to have a sales team out hunting for opportunities. We're more the farmers, right? We were just gathering opportunities that came in.
Right.
And now that it's more of all right, we have this reputation in the power sports market and the recreational market. We want to diversify and we want to keep growing power sports and recreation. But, let's fill some of this excess capacity, because I don't know that you'd ever get enough power sports business to fill the capacity that we have.
Right.
We're really good at gears. We're really good at casting, machining, assembly. Let's go look for some adjacencies there and go after that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of growth potential for team. And I think that being able to take that growth on without having to double how many employees you have or how many facilities you have is going to be ideal, because it's just like building inventory. You don't want to build too much capacity either. So
yeah, you just want to use the excess capacity you have, right? To get
to grow. Capacity that can be unlocked through automation of processes.
Yeah, I love that. Love that. So Micah, thank you so much for spending some time with us and talking through this. This is, again, love the way in which you're attacking these problems, the way in which you're using emerging tech like automation and AI, and unlocking stuff with even on the data side, right? With your analyzing and making better use of it. We get so many founders on the podcast that tell us, "Hey, I'm data rich and insight poor," right? And that's what you're doing. You're unlocking the insights. And so I just think it's fantastic. So Micah, thank you. We wish you guys the best of luck. I really hope that growth goals, you guys hit it, because you're a great American story, right? And there's not enough of it. And I really love highlighting companies like yours. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, that wraps up this episode of Future Proof. And Micah, just tell everybody how to get in touch with you. There'll be links in the show notes, but yeah, absolutely. Tell everybody how to get in touch with Team Industries. So guys, thank you for listening today. Thank you for tuning in. Micah, thank you for just sharing with us. We really appreciate you taking time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I love the podcast. Keep it up, right?
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Micah. And we'll see you guys on tomorrow's episode.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.